Words of our Divine Mother. From the collective works of our Divine Mother with the Conversations with a Disciple. Topic: Gods and the Psychic Being. Our Divine Mother says, the gods are faultless, for they live according to their own nature, spontaneously and without constraint. It is their godly way. But if one looks at it from a higher point of view, if one has a higher vision, a vision of the whole, they have fewer qualities than man. In this, it was proved that through their capacity for love and self giving, men can have as much power as the gods and even more when they are not egoistic, when they can overcome their egoism. Our Divine Mother says, certainly man is nearer the Supreme than the gods. Provided he fulfills the necessary conditions, he can be nearer. He isn't so automatically, but he can be. He has the power and the potentiality to be nearer to the divine. From the Conversation with the Disciple, date August 9, 1958. Question: Sweet Mother, aren't the gods always already fully conscious? For this, our Divine Mother says, no, they have no psychic being, so that whole side of life does not exist for them. In all the traditions here in India and in other countries and other religions as well, most of the time these gods behave impossibly. This is simply because they have no psychic being. The psychic being is the one thing belonging specifically to the terrestrial life. It has been given as a grace to repair, to undo what have been done. Question: Sweet Mother, yes, but aren't the gods conscious of the divine? For this, our Divine Mother says, listen, my child, they are conscious of their own divinity and of that above all, they are connected with the divine, yes, but I know from experience that they haven't the faintest notion of what surrender is. This is from the Conversation with a Disciple, date August 2nd, 1961. Next subtopic: Psychic Emotion and the Supramental Life. Our Divine Mother says, one could say that it is far more difficult to go from the mental to the supramental life than to go from a certain psychic emotion in life, something that is like a reflection, a luminous emanation of the divine presence in matter. To the supramental consciousness, it is much easier to go from that into the supramental consciousness than to go from the higher intellectual speculation to any supramental vibration. Our Divine Mother says, perhaps it is the word that misleads us. Perhaps it is because we call it supramental that we expect to reach it through a higher intellectual mental activity. But the reality is quite different. With this very high and pure and lofty intellectual activity, one seems to go towards a kind of cold, powerless abstraction, an icy light that is surely very remote from life and still further away from the experience of the supramental reality. The new substances.
The Maker shall recast us and enfold a plan of Godhead on the mortal mold, lifting our finite minds to His infinite, touching the moment with eternity.
Our Divine Mother says, the new substances that is spreading and acting in the world contains a warmth, a power, a joy so intense that all intellectual activity seems cold and dry beside it. And that is why the less one talks about things better, That's why the less one talks about these things, the better it is. A single instance, a single impulse of deep and true love, a single minute of deep communion with the divine grace brings you much closer to the goal than all possible explanations. Conversation dated April 17th, 1971. Next subtopic, psychic being and the superhumanity of tomorrow. Our Divine Mother says, in the beginnings of humanity, the ego was the unifying element. It is around the ego that the various states of beings were formed. But now that the superhumanity is about to be born, the ego must disappear and leave place for the psychic being which has slowly developed through divine agency to manifest the divine in man. Our Divine Mother says the divine manifests in man under the psychic influence, and that is how the coming of superhumanity is prepared. The psychic being, says our Divine Mother, the psychic being is immortal, so through it, immortality can manifest on earth. Hence, the important thing now is to find one psychic being, unite with it, and allow it to replace the ego, which will be forced either to convert itself or disappear.
Transfiguration is earth's due to heaven, a mutual debt binds man to the Supreme. His nature we must put on as he put ours. We are sons of God. It must be even as he. His human portion we must grow divine. Our life is a paradox with God's seeking.
Her Divine Mother says, ego is the construction, ego is the obstruction. Our Divine Mother says, ego is the obstruction, ego was necessary to shape humanity, but we are now preparing the way for a superhumanity, a supra-humanity. The job of the ego is over. It did its job well, now it must disappear, and it is the psychic being, the divine representative in man, that will stay on and pass into the next species. So we must learn to gather all our being around the psychic. Those who wish to pass to the suprahumanity must get rid of the ego and concentrate themselves around the psychic being. Conversation date April 13, 1972. Next subtopic, Nirvana and the psychic being. Our Divine Mother says there is a nirvana behind the vital, a nirvana behind the psychic, a nirvana behind the mind. There is a nirvana on every level, even behind the physical. It is death. And those who withdraw, who try to attain nirvana, never go into the psychic. The psychic is something essentially linked to the divine manifestation, not to the divine non intervention, not to nirvana. August 13th, 1963, of the Conversations with a Disciple. Next subtopic, Child of the Divine Mother. A Divine Mother. Next subtopic, Child of the Divine Mother. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, Chit Shakti.
The key is hidden, and by the inconscience kept. The secret God beneath the threshold dwells.
Next subtopic, Child of the Divine Mother. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says Chit Shakti or Bhagavat Chetana is the Divine Mother. The Jivatman is a portion of it, the psychic or soul a spark of it. Ego is a perverted reflection of the psychic or the Jivatman. It is true of every soul on earth that it is a portion of the Divine Mother passing through the experiences of the ignorance in order to arrive at the truth of its being and be the instrument of a divine manifestation and work here. From the collective works of Sri Aurobindo, volume 32, page 61, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the one who was an instrument for giving birth to the physical body of X was no doubt in her lifetime his material mother, but the relation which exists between the mother here and X and between the mother and all who accept her is a psychic and spiritual motherhood. It is a far greater relation than that of a physical mother to her child. It gives all that human motherhood can give, but in a much higher way, and it contains in itself infinitely more. It can therefore, because it is greater and more complete, take altogether the room of the physical relation and replace it both in the inward and the outward life, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo from the collective works of Sri Aurobindo, volume 32, page 108.